Ambient backlit lighting can be done relatively cheap for a really good price. I'm talking $50, and it would rival the best offerings from Govee and Fancy LEDs. Um, what I'm talking about here is Signal RGB. Signal RGB gives you perfect contrasts and also perfect sequencing on LEDs, um, that rivals the best offerings Govee and Fancy LED will give you at a fraction of the cost. This whole setup didn't cost me more than $50. And as you can see, the results are spectacular and breathtaking. And it's so much so that you would wonder why people would, especially on the PC side, need to buy products from Govee and Fancy LED when you have this technology available to you now to use. And that's what I'm hoping to show you guys today. So let's get to it. Here we go. So I believe Philips started this technology. The Philips ambient light, I believe it was back in those days when they came up with the TV with the ambient light. And back then when I saw the technology, I was pretty impressed. I was like, oh, that'd be nice, if I can get that one day. I never got the TV, but then I soon found out that certain companies were making similar technologies that you could, put the camera on a TV or monitor and then it'll, scan and then, you could mimic what's on the screen, through the LED lights. But the only problem for me was I hated the camera mount on top of the TV or monitor. I just didn't want that, And I didn't even know that Govee created. They had a sync box. I just found out recently that that was an option. You know, so once I found out about that, I definitely was on board. I wanted to try it out because that's for so long time wanted to do this. So I looked into it, and then I also found out that Fancy LED had a similar technology that offers the same thing, and if not even a little bit better, because I watched some reviews on YouTube that compared the two against each other, and it looked like Fancy LED had better contrast control, where if you're watching something in a dark scene, the lights go off, at the appropriate parts when it doesn't stay lit all the time. If you're watching something dark, it'll go off, and it looked like Govee didn't do that as accurately as Fancy LED did. So, anyways, I decided to go ahead and buy Fancy LED, and so when I bought it, and that was initially supposed to be what this video was supposed to be all about. I was gonna, do a review, do an open box on it, and talk about, you know, me setting it up and all that stuff, right? And so, but it wasn't until later that I ran some problems with Fancy LED, mainly that because my monitor, oh, I'm sorry, my TV is in a separate room, and so I had to run a cable, 15 foot cable from my computer to the TV. And then once I connected the fancy sync box, I was getting no signal on the TV. I tried all the different ways. So in my mind, I thought that maybe the uh, HDMI cable was too long. It was the reason why I was getting no signal, because it's a 15-foot run across the room. So I decided to bring the computer. As you guys know, my office, where my computer is separate from where my cockpit is. So I brought the computer from my office into the cockpit room so that the sync box was only a good 2 feet away from the TV, so I can plug it in directly. Right. When I did that, the fancy LED would send a signal to the monitor, and I saw a signal on the monitor on the TV, but then it kept flickering. The monitor will come on for like 2 seconds and then it'll go off. Come on for 2 seconds and then it'll go off. And it just kept doing that, and it didn't matter what I tried. It just kept doing it. It didn't stay. I looked online. People were saying that fancy LEDs aren't necessarily meant for computer setups. It's more for console. To me, that was unacceptable. It should still work. It's I'm still using the HDMI cable. So after I tried a bunch of different things, it didn't work. It just kept flickering every time. It didn't matter the cable length. I changed it to 1 foot. It was still flickering. I tried 3 foot flickering. So eventually I gave in, or I gave up, and I decided to go with Govee. So I bought the Govee fancy LED lights, and that worked. I plugged it up, and I got a signal, and I was able to do some random tests on it, and it worked. And I was gonna keep it, but then I thought, well, this is really supposed to be from my computer, not a console. I'm not doing a console setup, and I knew that I'd already seen that the contrast control on the Govee wasn't as accurate as what Fancy LED gave you. But then I also ran into another option, which is Signal RGB. Signal RGB is supposedly a PC only setup that allows you to do the same thing, has a lot more customization, a lot more control, a lot more accurate in terms of the contrast ratio. Um, and in fact, it gives you all the options you would expect from Fancy LED and some. And to make it even better, it's a lot cheaper. I think I paid two something. Was it 250 for a fancy LED, and for Signal RGB, the whole thing was going to cost me about $60 at the most. $60. So I got the LED lights, which is like $44, and then the chip that you would use to send a signal via Wi-Fi. The ESP32 chip controller. That was about maybe $7, and that's all you need. That's all you need. Signal RGP itself is free. It's a free download. You can subscribe to it, but you don't need it to get this effect that I'm talking about. I'm not going to go over all the details of setting Signal RGP in this particular video because I know you guys value your time. I don't want to take too much of your time, and I don't mind going over it. I enjoy talking about these things, but I guess I'll create a separate video and I can go more in depth in detail. If you guys want me to do that, let me know. Leave a comment. Let me know, and I'll go ahead and do that. But for now, I just want to go over what I found out about this and share with you guys about the possibilities of what you can do with the software, and just say that you guys don't need to get especially on the PC side, you don't need to get Govee or fancy LEDs to do this. You can do it a lot cheaper, and you can do it a lot more effective. And that's pretty much what this video is trying to tell you. Okay. So what I love about Signal RGB is that it just works. It just works. It's so seamless. Really, all you got to do is once you go over all the settings and you set up the the different parameters, you set up the layout, you could save the effects or pick certain effects that's already selected there for you. But once you do all that, it just works. Nothing else is like it. Like, you could set every single game that you want to play and have very specific effects load with the game so that it's completely hands off. You don't have to do anything. You can set all the different parameters. Like, I have a certain games that this particular one I have NBA 2K. But you can set the macros uh to load any game that you're playing, that you have to load, the saturations and the brightness level, and you know um just how the game would look. You can configure it to your tastes, and so that once you do all that, it becomes completely hands off. You just start the game and everything just loads perfectly for you. No other sync box does that, right? Right now, that I'm aware of, at least. Nothing else does that. So, and as you would see in the videos I will demonstrate, Signal RGB is so precise in how it controls the RGB lights, the LED lights. I'm sorry, to where it, depending on dependent on the LED lights you buy, it gives you complete control over each and every single light to where it'll turn off the light, you know, pertaining to, what's being displayed accurately, so that you have a lot of like dark scenes, and it'll have the LED shut off at the dark parts and then stay lit at the parts where it needs to stay lit, and it's fast enough to keep up with the screen, as it goes, from left to right, side to side. It doesn't lag. It catches it accurately. Um, it's pretty impressive. It does so fast without a lag, without any stutters, without any latencies. I'm sure there's the latencies to it, but it's you can barely see it. I mean, I'm not catching it when I'm playing. It happens in real time, and it is it's quick, and it just looks good. And to think that you're getting all of that for just $60, it's impressive. And so I'll just show some videos that I played, some games with me having certain setups or certain presets that I saved playing the game. Keep in mind, all you're watching me play, I played it at a really low um, brightness level. I think I generally play at like a negative 50 brightness level. You know, I don't even play at a zero level. Brightness. So zero is kind of like um halfway point as far as how bright you can get. I never imagine going to 100%. I stay at zero, but most of the time, and zero is plenty bright, but I usually play at like negative 50-ish, in that range, and it's still bright. Like what you're seeing right now, I know it's a little exaggerated because you're watching off a camera in a dark room, so it gets a little exaggerated. But it does get pretty bright at negative 30, negative 50, when you're playing it with Signal RGB. And just to think that you have a lot more room if you wanted to crank up the brightness even more, you could do that. And the one thing I would say though is that if you crank up the depending on the game, because every game is different. So certain games, if you crank the brightness level up way too high, especially if it's a fast scene game, um, it tends to have like a throbbing effect for me. If the LEDs are really bright and you're playing a fast paced, action paced game where things change a lot, like the screens changes a lot, I find it to be better to dim the brightness a little bit, to where it's not as what's the word I'm looking for? Um, you know, has that throbbing effect, when you play it that way. So, but you have control. You could pick whatever the parameters you want. You could it's your choice. So again, guys, this video wasn't meant to show you how to do this in detail, step by step. There are other videos on YouTube that can show you how to do that. But even still, I'm willing to do that if you guys want me to, if you guys want to see me do it. I'm happy to do it. Just leave a comment below, and I gotta be able to see there's enough interest in me doing this for me to want to show you step by step. But it's a pretty simple process, and I'm sure you guys can probably figure it out. But again, I'm happy to show you if the interest is there. You gotta leave a comment below and let me know, and I will be more than happy to do that. All right, guys. To wrap up, please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hit the like button. And I will release more videos out shortly. Thank you.